Presented by AfterBuzz TV and hosted by Hall of Fame superstar Sean X-Pac Waltman, this is Xpac 12360. And now your host, WWE Hall of Fame superstar Sean X-Pac Waltman.
Welcome to Xpac 12360, everyone. Woo! And if you're watching this right now, might look a little different because we're in a different studio. So, might have a little bit of a different feel. I don't know. You think that changes how the show feels?
It feels more calm with the blue. I feel. I don't feel like as like you know. I just feel like more soothed.
It's the bricks, the brick wall. It's
yeah.
Just getting ready for a fight. This is a little bit calmer.
Different studio, same building, just like two doors down. That's all. But yeah. Anyways, what's going on today? Besides today is the Hitman's birthday.
Yeah, there we go.
62 years old. Crazy.
That's crazy.
All my friends are old. Fuck. My girlfriend's like, oh, your friends are so old.
But does it make you feel better though? Like in a way, for you at least, that you're like, I guess you can say the younger one, or you
always
can be
the
like,
kid.
Still the kid?
Yeah, I'm always the kid. So, and that's just fine. Yeah. So happy birthday to the Hitman.
Did you text him already, or was that was the birthday surprise, or like the birthday happy birthday
I haven't
wish?
shot him in text or anything. I'll do that later after the show. So, and hey, and just real quick, yesterday was apparently I thought it was the 24th anniversary of my match with Bret, but apparently yesterday was the 25th anniversary. So somewhere along the lines, I lost a year. So, yeah. Anybody ever see that match?
Yeah.
Love that match, definitely. Yeah. How does I wanted to ask you kind of about the pacing of that match and that kind of I think that match is so kind of brilliantly paced, and there's such a kind of game of one-upsmanship going on there, and it definitely seemed like Bret was putting his ass off to put you over in that match. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, he absolutely. No, Bret. He got really aggressive with me in there for this sole purpose of making sure the people were behind me.
Create that sympathy.
Yeah, because the people always, people were always solidly behind me back then. But I'd never been up against, I'd never been across the ring from Bret.
Right, and that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if that was the first time that you had really been in that position of like, all right, let's see if he can hang, in the main event.
Yeah, I guess so. I never really thought of it at the time, but looking back on it, that match really, besides the, the stuff with Razor coming in the door, beating him and then having that $10,000, challenge match when I got back, obviously that was great for me, and, the victories over DiBiase and all that stuff, but, no, this was. I needed that. I needed that match. I had a little bit, after SummerSlam '93, my push kind of came to a little bit of a halt due to my own, behavior outside the ring. I think.
I see.
Yeah. I mean, no one ever really tells you, oh, we're punishing you now. You just all of a sudden, you're losing matches you think you're supposed to be winning, and. Just things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, anyways, I had a great match with Owen. A lot of people talk about it.
Was that from King of the Ring?
King of the Ring, 1994. Yeah. And so that was King of the Ring is in mid to late June.
Yeah.
And usually right around, I think that year was the 19th, June 19th. It's my son's birthday, so
okay.
I always know. But so. We had about a month in between that and this match with Bret. And so we knew a couple weeks out. I remember like the TV before that, because we would tape, one tape show, one live show. And so a couple weeks, it was at the previous set of TVs. I'm pretty sure it was Patterson that came up to Bret and, and told Bret we were having the match. And so we had plenty of time to think about it. And, the match was held at this place. It was called Fernwood Resort. It was like this crazy, up in the Pocono Mountains. It was this crazy. It was just like this. It was a resort like you go to in Cancun or something, but it was in the Poconos. They had the crazy honeymoon suites with the heart-shaped beds and all that. Hot tub, and I think we dressed in one of those rooms. Actually.
In one of the suites.
Yeah, and then they came to get us for the match like 2 or 3 different times, and 2 or 3 different times Bret said we're not ready yet, and so they shot our match out of sequence, and finally, obviously, eventually we were ready. And it's just we were really putting a lot of thought into that, and man, he really made me in that. Like I was saying, but he.
Yeah, and you can tell even just from the very beginning, the match starts right out. You give him an arm drag, and and even just his facial expressions, he's telling the whole story there.
And Jim Ross and Randy Savage just crushed it on commentary. Mm-hmm. That actually, it made the match even better, because I've watched that match with other voiceover, because obviously at one point Randy Savage was like
kind of on the outs.
Yeah, obviously, and so anything with his voice on it they VO'd, and so when they released this match on something, I can't remember what it was. They had a voiceover with Gorilla Monsoon and Stan Lane, and it fucking sucked. I was so mad. Stan Lane was making jokes, and here we are out there doing this match and all serious, and I was so fucking mad when I heard that. Oh.
Sean, with the near falls, which near fall when you were in the ring, did you really start feeling the crowd get behind you?
Oof. Oh, good question. It was in, once I mounted my comeback, there was the, he goes to superplex me, and I turn it into like a cross body press situation. That was good. Actually, any of that stuff, like, oh shit, when I dropped a fucking leg off the top, I think I jackknife powerbombed them. I mean, I just.
Yeah, and
they were buying, the crowd was buying all the near falls, line and sinker.
Well, and especially, that superplex spot, I think that reminded people a lot of the Razor, just the fact that it kind of could come out of anywhere.
And so, the uppercut forearms, the European style uppercut forearms that are referred to as lifters. That's what we call them, lifters.
Yeah.
And Bret was like pretty much the best lifter of anyone that's not from the UK, or he did.
Right.
And Bret, if you watch the match when he hits me with those things, it looks like he's taking my head off. And he actually told me no one had ever sold those like that before, but it wasn't hard to sell them.
Right, exactly. You can tell everything is definitely there for sure.
Yeah, and like there, I saw a picture. One picture of like after the match was over and Bret's holding his jaw, and I clocked him like 2 or 3 good times. And he's not, when you hit Bret Hart, when you potato Bret, he'll let you know. And he let me know. Yeah, he said those were some of the biggest potatoes I've ever had in my entire life.
So Sean, during this time you weren't really seeing very many championship matches, main events on Raw, and if Bret was wrestling on the show, it was sort of more of a squash match, right? But now, prior to that, we were mostly seeing Bret wrestle bigger guys. I mean, other than Owen Hart, you were the other guy that was able to really go toe-to-toe with him. So what was it like wrestling Bret Hart at his peak?
It was great. I mean, I don't know what you want me to say. It was, I wish I would have had more match. That was what we did after, the first and only time we ever had a match, and that's what came of it. So I can't imagine if we were ever able to, go out there and really get to know each other in the ring.
Sure.
What could have happened. So, I don't know. He was just it was. He's one of those guys that you just. I mean, he's the term ring general. You know, would have his in the dictionary would have his picture up by the definition. Well, you could just go out there and just listen to the guy, and you know, I don't know.
Was it a situation where you guys kind of both came to the table with a lot of ideas?
Oh yeah, no, he said, I want you to do all your shit.
Nice.
Yeah, and he let me do it all. Yeah, the dive to the floor though, he kind of barely caught me on it. And it fucked me up. Oh my god,
Those are rough.
I could barely breathe outside for a few seconds, but that's to me. If somebody asked me what's your favorite match, what was your best match, any of those questions involving, you know, the best match, like that's it. That's the one I choose, and I've had a lot of great ones. I've been in, you know, worked with Sean, Flair. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone, Scott.
Sure.
Different guy, and like the best guys of different styles. You know, I worked. Well, speaking of styles, I worked with AJ.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I don't know. That's the one I always, you know, point to.
Yeah,
that's my greatest singles match.
And it was at the Hall of Fame, correct? And Bret Hart was saying that he wanted to step in the ring with a guy like you, correct?
Yeah.
How did that feel, hearing that come out of him?
So Bret was the keynote speaker. Oh, this is a funny story. That was Bret's the keynote speaker at the Hall of Fame, and you know he's going on and he's talking about, you know, all the greats from the past who we were honoring there, and then, you know, he looks out into the crowd and he sees all the you know, the great guys, and you know, that are the future of the industry, and he singles me out. And this way, we didn't know we were having the match even, you know. So yeah, and then he said that about me, and as he's put me over like that, so Kurt Hennig and Jack Lanza we're all sitting together, and Jack he leans over and he goes, when he's finished, everyone get up and standing ovation. And so I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm all excited. And he was finished, and I fucking jumped up, and I'm fucking giving him this standing ovation. And I look around, and everyone's still sitting down.
No.
Yeah. It was the funniest fucking thing. You had to be there, but it was so funny.
So it came across like you were cheering for your mention?
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious.
Oh, my God. Did Bret notice that?
I don't know.
Did you guys make eye contact?
That's funny.
Oh, man. So I don't know if I believe you talked about this on prior shows, but I just want to remember exactly. So for you, what would you say were the differences, similarities between wrestling Bret, wrestling Owen?
There was some similarities in that you could just go out there and just wrestle and not have to, you know, call things.
They were both kind of ring generals in that sense.
Yeah. and it was, I could do that too. It was just, there was a certain, you know, way of how you could do things back then. And, you know, because like a lot of times you would be working with a guy and you wouldn't even talk to him before the match because they dressed on the other side of the building.
Right.
Like they did in the Memphis territory. They did that in Nashville. I remember the first time I worked with Brian Christopher. We had a great fucking match, but we didn't speak one word before the match. It was, you know, we had a finish and that was it, and just went out there and intuitively like just had a match. But yeah, no, that's what you could do with both of those guys, Bret and Owen, and Bret was okay. I think Owen was the better athlete. I think it's safe to say that, and I could tell, like, being in there with him. You know, he moved, you know.
And he was, and I think his style was a little bit closer to yours as well, right?
Yeah, and well, my style was a little bit closer to his because I did a lot of emulating of Owen Hart.
Sure.
Coming up in my, you know, when I was coming up. But okay, the main difference, and I'll say this with respect to I don't want to take. Well, it is the way it is. Fucking when Owen didn't give a fuck, it could be brutal out there with him, like on purpose. Like he could grab your arm and just like do these fucking. It looked just like this too. He'd be holding your arm, he'd be hitting your arm like this, and it'd be like you fucking get like because he just was like checked out sometime.
Right.
Yeah, fuck it. So that was what separated those two. If Owen took it as serious as Bret did, he'd have been better than Bret.
It's crazy.
He would have.
We'll definitely have to talk about that King of the Ring match for sure. I absolutely crazy about that match.
Do you think?
Okay, we can talk about that later.
Do you think that this
not
match?
today, but
Yeah.
Do you think this match with Bret helped you solidify yourself in front of the fans?
The fans and my peers, because I remember right after that we were in the airport and we just happened to cross paths with all the WCW guys, and they all came up to me and were like, "Oh my God, your match with Bret, like Finlay, Regal, the guys that like." If they come up to you and compliment you, like, you must have had a hell of a fucking match.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't just lip service. It was like, and that's the greatest thing in the world for somebody like me, to have those kind of, to be praised by your peers. It's great. Obviously, man, we do this for the, to satisfy the fans, but like, that respect to your peers is huge.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and especially when you're someone like me that, I grew up idolizing a lot of these guys that I ended up working with, and then to have them say things, complimentary things about how you, about your craft, the way, the way I, whatever. Let's go. Move on.
That's great. That's a huge deal.
Me. What about me?
Well, that's what we're talking about. It's okay.
That's right there on the tin.
But yeah, 25 years.
Yeah.
I think you had everybody questioning their
we just
math.
spent 25 minutes talking about that math.
You had me questioning my math, and I'm really bad at math already as it is. When I saw it, I was like, what? What year are we in?
All right.
All right. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move into some news. All right, so last week after our show, I think it was the day after where the news broke, there was an email blast sent out. WWE announced that there would be new executive producers. For Raw, it would be Paul Heyman, and for SmackDown, it would be Eric Bischoff. Now, this obviously had lots of people on Twitter going back and forth talking about this, but I want to know, what were your thoughts?
Thoughts about the news or thoughts about
both the news, who they chose to be in this position, sort of, because they're essentially overseeing creative development, right? So maybe talk a little bit about that. What do you think?
I don't know. Happy for Paul and happy for Eric, because I really like them both. And there's, there are good reasons for why they, there's a track record there.
Sure.
Eric's is a little bit different, obviously. Eric wasn't really the creative guy, so I'm curious to see how this plays out for him, or how how SmackDown looks, with him at the helm. I mean, we kind of got a little bit of a taste of what Raw is going to look like, with Paul there, and I think it was. So far, I think it was pretty good review on Raw last night.
There's definitely a
everyone's
noticeable
like, oh my
difference.
God, this is better than it has been in forever, right?
Well, one of the key points or biggest topics that people were talking about in regards to this is the difference. It's between Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, whereas Paul Heyman is known for following the product and, outside of WWE and knowing what's going on, and Eric Bischoff not being that sort of person. So do you think that might affect that what he's gonna being in that role and not being aware of what's going on outside the company?
Absolutely. It's just that, like, okay, so what Eric, this is just from my point of view, how I always saw it. What Eric was really smart about was picking guys that were brilliant at the things that he wasn't. You know, like surrounding himself with. So like Eric, I mean, Eric could just find somebody that I don't know.
He'd find
Do you
somebody.
know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like Eric knew, like, okay, I'm not like genius booker, so let me get somebody else that is known for
He
that.
would
right?
get people to kind of cover his blind spots. Yeah.
And that's good.
And on 83 weeks, he usually when you look back at a mid-90s pay-per-view when the finish wasn't that great or the match wasn't agented as well as he thought, that would usually be what he said. That's like, I delegated that wrong. That's usually Kevin Sullivan who puts the finishes together. I didn't like that. I didn't like the continuity. And I wish, looking back, I wish I had gone back to Kevin Sullivan and told him about that, like explained to him the vision I want.
Yeah.
And I think his work at TBS and with Time Warner now correlating as a TV producer to work with Fox, I think makes him perfect for this role.
Sure.
More so than the creative vision of a TV show. What does SmackDown Live on Fox, probably on Friday nights, what does that look like versus Raw on Monday nights? And I think he's the person for that vision.
Do you guys think because it seems like they're trying to make this iteration of SmackDown on Fox look more like a legitimate sporting program, do you think that that hiring him in this role will be in service of that?
We will see. Like he hasn't even had a week on the job yet. So, yeah, I have no idea what a SmackDown with Eric at the helm would look like. On the other hand, you kind of have an idea of what a Raw is going to look like, and that's what it looked like. I mean, you could smell Paul Heyman's scent all over the show last night, right?
Especially week to week. And we're going to get into Raw, so I don't want to do it, but like week to week, you see last week, Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman had a tug of war. This week,
they're going through
this week they're going through the stage.
Right.
And I wouldn't be shocked if part of that was him already being involved.
Interesting.
To say, well, this week, let's do some of these ideas so that next week, when we make this announcement, we can show a marked difference.
Right. Can really ratchet it up.
Eric Bischoff did do in an interview. In an interview, he said that he does realize the magnitude of this job. And then considering that they are making the big move to Fox, it's kind of like he's kind of coming in with more pressure, I think. Yeah. And, some may wonder, like, there was maybe perhaps other people that could have also held this position, So I just
surprised Vince Russo's not like, hey, what about me? me? What about me? Hey, Fox.
I'm sure if we listened, he is saying that.
Right.
But overall, do you think it's just going to be a wait and see game then?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
As far as Raw last night goes, I was happy with that.
Yeah.
So I mean, first week for Paul seems like a good one. And then you got to understand they can't just overnight, like, there has to be a transition, right? You can't just all of a sudden, halt like storylines and it has to be kind of easing into it.
Well, also like Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo tried that on Nitro a long time ago, and it wasn't what they thought it would be. We're like, we're just gonna come out and we're gonna take all the belts and we're gonna crown Jeff Jarrett as the biggest heel and like
reboot,
like we're gonna reboot the whole show, and it's like I don't know if we need that. Like I like that we went from tug of wars to stage destroying, and then in 2 months. In 2 months, it'll look like a different show.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll have plenty to say once we get into talking about Raw proper.
Yeah. All right. There's so many things to talk about. Like, I don't want to get caught up on one particular thing too much.
All right, well, let's move on then. Last week we were talking about the whole Twitter feud between Seth Rollins and Will Ospreay and, sort of picking sides, shots being taken, etc. Well, about a few hours before we started our show, Seth Rollins actually apologized to Will Ospreay on Twitter. He apologized about bringing up the point about comparing bank accounts, and then he went on to say it was dumb of me and not in line with my values. The moment I pressed the send button, I knew it was trash, but I'm too stubborn for my own good.
Yeah. something like that is what one would hope. You know, like after, like you said, you know, a couple days of sitting on it, and yeah, we get caught up, and it's easy to do that on Twitter. It's the worst. You know, like it brings the worst out in us.
Right.
I'm not going to say us as in everyone, but us, like, yeah, well, I mean, generally speaking.
Yeah. Us as in humanity. Twitter doesn't amplify our best traits. That he said that partially because he knew that tweet would fit kind of the way discourse happens on Twitter, not necessarily who he is as a person.
So, you know, I'm happy to see that. I just hate, you know, it's hey, I'm better than you. No, you're not. Well, okay, let's prove it. Okay, you know, hey, I just had this match. You know, let's see what you got. You know, like back and forth like that. That's good, healthy, you know, shit talking, competitive, you know,
for sure,
shit talking. And that's the kind of shit I want to see. I don't want to see that it turn
comparing
the
bank
way
accounts,
it did, you know.
Bullshit, yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and then, but by comparing bank accounts, you're comparing professional philosophy of like, oh well, I'm making the most money, so therefore I'm the best. And
right.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think we need to get into that argument.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just waiting for Will to like go like full blown heel and go fuck yourself.
Turn
it back around, flip the script.
Right.
Well, I think that either way, like, it was pretty interesting that Seth Rollins did this because it's not every day, like, even like every day in our everyday lives, it's not easy to admit, hey, I was being stubborn. I'm not going to change my mind. Like, it's hard to admit that.
It is hard. But you know what's even harder is when you do something like that and you have to just keep sitting on it without fucking correcting it or making it right. When you're a decent human being and you have respect for the other person. Like, because obviously, like, regardless, come on. There has to be a fuck ton of mutual respect there between those two. So, yeah.
I don't think Seth Rollins would have mentioned Will Ospreay at all had he not had enough respect to be where, like,
right.
Seth Rollins doesn't have a history of like blowing up people who don't deserve it.
Right.
Like,
and that's we had talked about that a little bit last week. The fact that he even engaged with him is kind of a sign of a certain amount of respect.
All right, next.
All right, well, let's go on and talk about AEW's Fyter Fest that happened over this weekend in Daytona. What did you guys think of the show?
I liked it. There were things about it.
Yeah,
you know?
I think one of the things coming out of it that a lot of people are talking about is that unprotected chair shot that Cody Rhodes took from Shawn Spears. Do you want to talk about that?
Okay, I wasn't a fan of it.
Right.
Okay, we don't need that. That being said, like a lot of people just like to just take anything and blow it up and have outrage over it and oh my god, the fucking okay, yes, not good. It's okay. I'm pretty sure like getting dropped on your fucking head, like, you know, with the super collider, fucking yada yada, fucking brainbuster suplex isn't good on your fucking head either.
Right.
Your brain. Yeah, I just think it was a big deal made out of it.
Right.
I think it was way too big a deal made out of it. It wasn't good. Shouldn't have done it. So they won't do it again.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping is that they at least know that something like that they don't need to do often, if at all.
Well, and it was interesting because
I mean, what do people want? What do they want?
Also, if Shawn
Just
Spears,
everyone to hear them be outraged? I mean, I'm not sure what... I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
And even... I'm pretty sure... I'm not pretty sure, but like I would assume the plan was we want this to really have that much impact.
Right.
So much so that even heading into this, the plan might have been he's going to take an unprotected chair shot so bad he's going to bleed. And then we're never going to do anything like that for 5 years.
Right.
That's the value.
I don't know. Shouldn't have done it. Should we be making like just should we be just beating a fucking dead horse into the ground over it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention was because of this chair shot, Darby Allin was sort of forgotten about. But even though prior to all of that, he was looking pretty good in terms of he was able to go to a draw with Cody. And I thought that in terms of like building somebody up and making them to big, like, you know, to be a star eventually.
Yeah, kind of like the way that we were talking with you and Bret.
Yeah.
So, like, it was going all, like, everything that was planned with Darby there, but the chair shot sort of took away from that, so I kind of just wanted to bring light to the fact that Darby Allin was one of, like, the standouts of the show.
It kind of made the... Yeah, it did take away from the match, and, like, no one's talking about the match now.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody is.
The people that are, though, there's been a lot of comparisons talking about Darby Allin being sort of this era's Jeff Hardy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
How about he's just this era's fucking Darby Allin?
I dig that.
Oh my God, I'm like, can we just cut it out with the fucking, like the modern day this guy? Like, no, he's fucking Darby Allin. Mm-hmm. I get the temptation to always make comparisons and so-and-so's the new this or... I mean, okay, they're eccentric, you know,
risk
out
takers.
there characters.
Right.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
But no, I don't see it other than
Sure.
they're both just.
Yeah, nobody else is taking those coffin drops on the apron.
Well, some of the other people that were considered show standouts were MJF, of course, a Jungle Boy who's also doing really well, and it's funny because in their match with Hangman Page, MJF, Jimmy Havoc, and Jungle Boy, I kind of felt like even though Hangman Page is supposed to be like the next top star or like one of the top stars, I kind of feel like MJF sort of overshadowed him and is sort of kind of claiming that like spot.
Maybe. Yeah, and that's fine. That's how it goes.
Yeah. I like that. I actually like the idea that it's not like, oh, this is the person we're planning on, so this is the person it's gotta be. Like, no, MJF is sort of like rising, like even from the, you know, from the first show that they did. It's sort of been like going higher and higher. And then even Jungle Boy was one of those stands out. Like, he's one of those guys that people just like.
Yeah, they like him.
Just
and it's not because he's Luke Perry's son either.
Right.
They just like the guy. You know, like a lot of people don't even know that about him when they see him. He's a good, hard-working kid. Like, he has good ideas. He executes his stuff well. Good look, you know. He's not a big kid, but he's in shape. Mm-hmm. And I like the thing with him and Lucha. It's like Kane and mine Kane's.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it flows well. Moxley also came up looking like a star as well. I mean, that one I thought he was pretty impressive on the show and had that star persona that, you know, that you just know. Okay, even if you weren't a wrestling fan, let's say you were just hanging out at a friend's house and you're watching, you're like, okay, this guy's a big deal. So I thought that was a good standout to have during this show. But one of the things that people weren't too happy about was actually the pre-show.
Yes.
People were not feeling that one at all.
Is it because of the Jabali thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was part of it, yeah.
Yeah. And what else was it?
Well, people weren't really too happy with like some of the matches.
Like what?
Well, Best Friends, Private Party, SCU, the Leather
What was the matter with the
people
Private
didn't
Party?
like it.
I thought they did great.
I thought that was a great match. Of the three matches
What's the
on
fucking complaint about the Private Party?
Just people were just not necessarily like just like specifically with them, just people weren't too invested into the pre-show and what was happening on the show itself.
Oh, okay.
So that was more of like the highlight, like as a whole
Do
is
you
what
mean
I'm
the
saying.
people watching at home? Because the people in the building seem to be just fine with it,
Yeah.
Sure.
from my point of view. So is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
People online and...
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Of the three pre-show matches, I thought the tag match was the strongest. Mm-hmm. And that's taking away nothing from Allie and Leva Bates bell to bell. This librarian thing, I'm not a fan.
Yeah,
No.
that one was being trashed a lot for sure.
Well, it's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working, and it's not. I think it's a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's good. It was worth a try. I just don't think it's resonating. And Leva Bates, I think that there's a million things she could do, obviously, because she does do a million things.
Yeah, well, her and Peter both. Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, no. And if the Private Party, come on. I love that. Those guys were great.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I thought their match with Chucky and Trent was fun. I don't understand. What's a... Yeah, okay, the Jabali, the guy from CEO.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, that probably shouldn't have been on there. Maybe, I think it was fine for the building.
Yeah.
Live, but maybe not. Maybe it shouldn't have been on the broadcast.
That's fair. I actually think...
Because it was fine. Those guys, it wasn't like, oh, they went out there and it was an embarrassment. No, those guys went out there and worked hard.
Yeah, it was
and,
solid.
And there wasn't, I mean, they did better than a lot of guys. I'm fucking on shows, but... don't get me started. Like,
but for televised...
They would have been the best match on a lot of shows that I've been on. Fuck.
But, like, for televised wrestling, it's really pass-fail, and they passed.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I get why people are mad about that.
All right. Well, moving on, let's go ahead and talk about some other news. And it's looking like there might be a new future in store for Impact. And it looks like they are actually in talks with Access TV. It hasn't been confirmed, but it was reported by Voices of Wrestling, who said that there is communication, or that they have been communicating. So there looks like a chance that they might be getting out of Pursuit, which, let's face it, Pursuit is not really the best home for them.
What is Pursuit?
Isn't it a hunting channel?
Yeah, I was going to say it's a hunting channel.
Oh, that's right.
And then they also have their Twitch deal as well, which, Twitch is growing more and more, obviously, but overall, I think that this would be, if Impact were to go with Access, I think this would be a really exciting move for them.
Yeah.
And then I heard somewhere that apparently if they actually get this new home with Access, or even like another network, they're going to be the show that in their first run has been on more networks than any other televised show. So fun fact for Impact, if that were to happen. So it's pretty interesting,
What
right?
a distinction.
I guess. I mean, the thing is the company really is... Other than the name Impact, I mean, what's left
now
about the company that's even the same?
It's very different, and they've highlighted certain talent. For example, LAX. They've highlighted certain talent that wasn't highlighted, in other places, or kind of boosted them up.
Yeah.
And their shows have continuously been good, and they've been doing a lot of different stuff and mixing a lot of different styles and bringing in like more lucha guys and sorry, I can't even talk anymore. But they've been influencing like a lot of different styles in their shows, and even their upcoming show Slammiversary, that's actually being held in Dallas. And if you recall, Mark Cuban owns the Dallas Mavericks, so there's also that connection. So it makes you wonder, like, is something going to be happening maybe after, or is there even a bigger play in this? Because there are rumors that there might be something in store that is bigger than just Impact going to Access.
Oh, okay. I'm hoping for something with that company. I mean, it seems like they put out these TVs, and then I've heard like some people weren't happy there, and they're being stuck in these contracts that aren't paying anything, and so hopefully that all changes. Like, what's up with Killer Cross?
He was asking, I think, for a 6-figure contract. That's what happened there. And I know Scarlett Bordeaux has also left already. I believe as of right now, she's still a free agent. She hasn't announced anything. Okay, yeah, because the last time I checked, she was still a free agent. And, but yeah, no, Killer Cross wants more money. And I think that there is interest for him elsewhere and other places. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there is.
And so I think he's seeing that and saying, like, okay, if you're not going to pay me X amount of money, then I want to go somewhere else. But Impact is saying that he's still with them, I think, for a longer period. I don't know if it was like a few years, or I'm not too sure on the actual length.
Here's the thing. If you're Impact and you are able to pay more money, you need to do it. Because you don't want to force somebody to stay in a contract and be on your roster, be in your locker room that's carrying around resentment, because it poisons the water supply for the rest of the roster and the rest of the locker room, and it's not good.
I think the unfortunate thing with Impact is that they do have a lot of talent. They have been putting a lot of great matches, but because of the networks that they have been on, people aren't seeing it. So these guys are going out there. They're putting top-notch stuff out there, but maybe it's just the word isn't being spread enough, and that's because they're not on a network that can really,
And maybe they're maybe they're really trying to keep something alive, a brand that it just has too much of a stink on it that can't be washed off. I don't know. Boy, they're really fond of that fucking Impact brand, aren't they?
Right.
And just because TNA wrestling was, I want to say the bigger version of this on Spike TV, and that's where the stink really comes from.
Sure.
That if you ask most wrestling fans who aren't familiar with what's happening on Impact week to week, what they remember is Hogan and Bischoff and like a lot of stuff they heard about it, they watched it, and they didn't like it. So like I think brand wise, that's what they're still dealing with. That is that show?
Yeah, and
like,
that's so unfair. It shouldn't be that way. Like, why are we still judging something off from like something that isn't even happening right now
because
anymore?
they're still trying to live off of fucking something.
They're still calling it the same thing. Yeah.
Denise?
Like they're still trying to trace their lineage back to Hulk Hogan.
I just feel that there's probably a lot of people out there that aren't really giving it a full, fair chance.
Oh, sure.
And that's,
Obviously.
That's where a lot of the stigma comes from, because a lot of the dedicated fans that watch Impact and, enjoy the product are some of the ones that have decided to open themselves up to the product. There's a lot of good stuff and a lot of good talent that has been coming out of there. So I just think that it's somewhat unfair that we're still like...
I mean, as long as they keep calling it Impact, that's going to keep happening. Like, there's going to be those people that's like, I tried it, didn't like it, don't need to try it again, despite how good they are now.
And despite how long ago that statement was.
Right,
that it's like,
right.
I tried it when it was on Spike TV, and it's like, they've literally had like 15 different teams.
Right,
since then.
But that logic is, well, if it's still Impact Wrestling, how different can it be,
That's fair logic.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Moving on, let's talk about CM Punk has now countered a counter lawsuit against Colt Cabana, a countersuit, excuse me, and this is in response to the suit that Colt Cabana filed in August of 2018, saying that CM Punk didn't pay for certain legal fees that were supposed to be paid for or that he promised to pay for, and now CM Punk is claiming that he actually did spend $1.2 million and that Colt Cabana never reimbursed him for any of that money and therefore is in breach of contract. So they're both sort of, it's like he said, she said sort of thing right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess, I should have paid more attention to the board up there when you wrote all this shit down, Denise, because
Sorry.
I don't know if I want to weigh in on this. It's just sad.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah, fuck that. I'm not weighing in on this.
Okay.
All right, well, moving on then. Yeah, okay, moving on. Let's go ahead and talk about, we mentioned this earlier, that we're getting a glimpse of what a new Raw with Paul Heyman being part of the creative development or being an executive producer overseeing creative development is looking like. And it's safe to say that there are definitely some changes being made on Raw. So let's go ahead and just start off with the opening segment. Bobby Lashley, Braun Strowman, false count anywhere. Braun Strowman running him through the LED boards and all the pyro explosions and the huge pop from the audience, and even how this was handled via commentary and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, a way to start things off. Oh, God. I can't believe I'm about to say this. With a bang.
Yeah.
Fuck.
That feels like Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon working in tandem.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
after weeks and weeks and weeks of Raw starting with promo after promo after promo, this is a hell of a way to kick things off.
Yeah, and then so they had a nice 6-man on starting the show off, right? I mean,
yeah, started as a tag, and then they went to break, and then it turned into a 6-man.
Oh, started as a tag, and then went into break because of that fucking wrestling during the fucking breaks. Shit.
Right.
But Sean, before we move into that match, though, with Corey Graves saying the holy shit word online, on air, what did you think about that? Since a lot of people were surprised that this was said. Wasn't
a big deal. Honestly, I mean, I get it. I get the like, oh my God, he said holy shit. But like, people say shit on cable TV now.
Right.
It's not like, oh, you're not allowed to say that.
I think
you're allowed to say that.
I think just what a lot of people were talking about is that like, if there was a clear indicator that like this might be the first in the quote unquote Heyman regime.
Also, I guess the one thing that would be kind of surprising is like, if there's going to be any holy shits, you would think it would be in the third hour.
Sure.
And not, the top of the first hour.
Right.
With all the kids watching.
Right.
I don't know what the kids are going to do now after they heard someone say, holy shit.
I have a lot of kids in my family, and I know for a fact they are saying worse things than that. Just throwing that out there. Moving on. You were talking about the 6-man.
Yeah, it was just it was something different, right? Like, okay, here's a match that we haven't seen 20,000 times
Right.
already in previous weeks.
Right.
So it just had a different feel to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I dig the Viking Raiders a lot, and I think they bring something new to the table on Raw for sure.
And a good mix with Samoa Joe.
Yeah,
They
of
just
course.
mix
Right?
very,
Bunch
very,
of
very
hosses.
well.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah.
You're like, this makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And even when they had that exchange with Biggie Langston, I was kind of like, with Biggie, I was kind of like, okay, I keep adding that. I have not let it go, apparently.
Can't have last names, damn it.
So even kind of seeing that exchange, it was just kind of like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
And the Street Profits showed up on TV.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I thought that worked how they were.
I'm split on it myself. I want to get your thoughts on it, but I'm excited to see them get called up for sure. What I'm less excited about is the fact that they got called up so fast after winning the NXT tag titles. Would like to see.
Well, and after
And
winning,
what are we doing? What was that? And
because that's the exact same thing they did.
We're just trying to get everyone acquainted with them, or just to see what people. Just to kind of get a reading of what the people are thinking. I don't know.
Sure.
do we know if that was an official debut or them just turning up?
I mean, they literally said the words making their Raw debut, but for whatever that means, who's to say?
I would prefer, hey, the Street Profits are this really big deal down in NXT. We're going to give them this brief interview segment so the main roster can know who they are.
Sure.
So that when we call them up months from now,
People
the main roster,
don't have no clue. Yeah.
which I think the crossover between NXT and the main roster is bigger than most who are making these decisions think it is.
Sure.
But if that's what you have to do, then no, let's have them on TV so people know who they are. I like that. If they're just on Raw starting next week, it shows a pattern I'm seeing, especially among NXT tag teams, that it's like, who's the champ? Bring them up.
Right.
What about the championship? I don't know.
Right.
Drop it.
Yeah.
Drop it. Have a tournament. It's like, we just did that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So then there was also the Drew McIntyre Undertaker segment. What did you guys think about that? I thought this was a pretty good both promos on behalf of Drew and Undertaker.
Yeah, Taker talked a lot. Usually he talked more than he usually does, and it was good stuff. Usually, sometimes it's like, oh, don't let Taker talk too much, but everything he said was good, and seemed to get the right responses.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that match. I like that Taker and Reigns. I mean, them as a team makes sense. No matter who the people on the other side of the ring would be. So I get that. Bring Taker back, get him on TV. Hopefully it helps with the ratings. I don't know.
And I like that they're building off of the history of these last few WrestleManias. The fact that he has this begrudging respect for Roman Reigns because of Orlando and his history with Shane and Dallas, things like that.
Yeah.
All right, so how about we go ahead and skip forward and talk about the whole Becky Seth and the whole Maria and Mike Kanellis situation. So it sort of started off with a backstage segment where Maria comes out and she basically tells Becky and Seth Rollins that they're the couple of wrestling, and she puts over Mike Kanellis and all of that. And then afterwards, they're in this match, Seth, Becky versus Mike and Maria, and afterwards, it sort of just goes into something so different about Mike Kanellis not being man enough to. Basically, Maria announces that she's pregnant, and she really is. And she basically says that he wasn't man enough to impregnate her, and that the only man that was really man enough today was Becky Lynch, and maybe Becky Lynch should have impregnated her. And it just made Mike Kanellis look like very, very small.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, that was a bummer.
Seriously, and I get I've heard, I don't know, I've read that it was their idea.
Really?
Yeah. Or, I mean,
I've heard versions of this, or read also.
like some like I heard like one of them where they pitched some kind of a cuck storyline.
She did.
I'm like, what the fuck?
She did refer to him as her bitch in a backstage promo.
I mean, how is this so like? What the fuck, Mike?
It just doesn't make sense
seriously.
for Mike. Like
Right.
Maria,
Yeah.
she looked fine, all right? She's great on the mic.
Yeah.
We know that she has a good skill. She plays off a good
Dude.
heel, etc. But for Mike,
I mean, where's this going? To what fucking end? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I feel-
If there's like, okay, if they have a logical, like if they have a destination they're heading towards, and okay, and it starts like coming together and like some sense is made of it, okay, I'll fucking maybe come around to it. But right now I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Especially after,
like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
after so many weeks of him kind of passionately defending the work that he's doing on 205
Yeah.
Live. Yeah, definitely interested to see where this is going.
Who's I? Oh,
just didn't make sense.
hate that.
Right.
And like,
I fucking hate it.
and hopefully they have a plan moving forward that, because you would think it's an interesting pairing that if Maria's a heel manager and then because of the way she treats him, he's a face. Would be the
Interesting.
only like logical thing I see, and
That's it.
And, like,
Yeah, but at some point, people
It's-
aren't like, okay, people feel sorry for you to a point.
Yeah, they'll
And then
only have
they're
so much
dude,
sympathy.
Quit being a fucking bitch.
and then if he has this
Quit
today,
being, like, fuck it. Like, because at some point, you're just pathetic. It's not we feel sorry for you. You're just pathetic.
but we have 3 weeks until we get there, and then if it like let's say within 3 weeks he just like he has the today's the day I'm breaking
Yeah.
out of this vicious cycle. Oh, by the way, the kid's not mine. It's Cesaro, and then he works with Cesaro. I could see a long-term story where that plays.
Sure.
This was a bit of a rocky start for me.
The only like way I would like for this to turn out storyline wise is for him to kick her the fucking curb.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
To
And
me,
that's just storyline wise. I'm not saying in real life because
course.
they're
Yeah,
both good
sure.
people.
they're like,
and I'm happy, like, and they just signed a new contract, so obviously, that's not the issue here.
Sure.
So
And
this is how you're rewarded for signing a new fucking contract.
and
yeah, like 5 years, right?
Slice
5-year
your fucking
contract?
nuts off on live TV.
well, and if she's pregnant, and she'll eventually be off the road in the next couple months, and if he isn't, they should hopefully be building towards something that's
All right.
he can walk out there by himself.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so moving on, one of the other things that we should talk about is Ricochet versus AJ Styles for the U.S. title. And AJ Styles, Gallows, and Anderson essentially laying out Ricochet afterwards.
Yep. And I like the stuff, the building up, the backstage segments with them.
That segment with AJ and Ricochet slapping each other
Yeah.
was an awesome
it
segment
was
for
good.
sure.
It's all good stuff. And I like, okay, instead of pussyfooting around and like just, I'm kind of just like, okay, we got a fucking heel AJ Styles, like a legit heel, right? And I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and hopefully by proxy it elevates Gallows and Anderson as well.
You know how that they get elevated by it being written into the storyline, like into the TV. Like, okay, we're gonna push these guys again.
Right.
That's how they get elevated. I think they've always been like. I think they've always been ready for it.
Sure. Oh God, yes.
So,
They've just been like floating around,
yeah,
sort
they've
of
just
deal.
been used like shit.
We've had glimpses of them here and there, even prior moments
Yeah.
with AJ throughout since AJ's been there, but nothing really actually came of it. It was kind of
Right.
like a little tease, like it's
Yeah.
there, but we're not doing anything with it yet.
It's weird how like what motivates people to go from putting on like Raws that everyone's complaining about to all of a sudden we have last night people are fucking universally praising it.
Yeah.
So what the fuck? Like, I mean, why do we have to get to this point for this kind of shit to happen?
And
Ugh.
what fascinates me is if the announcement hadn't happened last week about Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman, and then they put on this Raw, would there be as much sizzle and steak to this Raw? that we'd all be like, oh, it's the Paul Heyman era, everything's changed.
Right.
If we didn't know that had happened backstage.
I think it's the opposite. I think if we didn't know that, people would be talking even more about how different
Really?
it is. I think so, for sure. Because now I think this is giving
have an
people a
idea.
reason to go like, oh, well, that's why.
I have an idea.
What's that?
Have you ever seen like with network shows where they'll like do, they'll just do like a special like unscripted or some weird where they just kind of like I think they should do an episode of Raw like that like and promote it as this Raw unscripted. A whole episode where everyone just kind of goes out there, their matches, they produce their own matches, they go out there and say what they want to say without being scripted, just give them bullet points, and watch how many fucking people tune in to see that.
Sure.
A fuck ton of people will watch that. Just to see, like,
Yeah.
just go, yeah, so.
It sounds cool
That'd
too.
be fantastic.
When you painted it on the marquee, I was like,
Raw
yeah.
unscripted.
And that sounds like something you could get over without using TV time, where if just Paul Heyman from his Twitter says, next Monday, this is what I'm doing.
Right.
And you never see him on TV other than the advocate for Brock Lesnar, but on Twitter he made it clear, as executive creative person,
Yeah.
this is what we're doing next week.
Sure.
And, all right, let's get the fuck out of here.
All right, let's
Denise.
do this. All right, so before we go, guys, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and on Instagram, Facebook at Xpac12360 and Xpac12360 Show. On YouTube, we are youtube.com/X/Xpac, and we're about to hit 10,000 subscribers. So
right.
that's very exciting. Daily clips, weekly shows, you can find that on there. You can also find us on Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. You guys can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at _Denise Salcedo. Steve, do you want to start it off?
You guys can find me on Twitter almost exclusively at Steve Kaufman. That is KAUFMANN. I'm involved in a lot of YouTube pages. If I'm tweeting a link, chances are I'm involved.
And Ty?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram at Ty Matthews PMA.
All right. See you next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Sean Waltman, and the entire Xpac 12360 staff, thank you for tuning in to Xpac 12360.